Welcome to the Pitch Strike Chronicles. I am Chats. I am here with Rob, and we'll be breaking down the weekend series against the Baltimore Orioles and what was a lost series, but with nothing really to play for. We will be breaking that all down right here on Pinstripe Chronicles. Well, we had the final homestand of the season against the Baltimore Orioles, in which we only took one game out of the three, but it really didn't hold any ramifications on the season at all. It was pretty much like you just said, games just to see if he gets the Judge hit 62. But was there anything that you were hoping to see that would give you a little more confidence going into the postseason?
Guess the way DJ swung the bat when he came back, just that's really it. I wanted to see if he was 100% back or as close to 100% as he could be, because he needs to play. He needs to play every day. He's one of the big bats in our lineup that we've been missing for a while. So we just need to make sure the guys who are healthy that we know are going to be on this playoff roster are ready to go.
Yeah, no, well, that's really what it is. Obviously, the headline's always going to be around Judge, but it is, like you said, waiting to see as guys are coming back, what form are they coming back in? I think that's important. I think we're going to see that also in this next series, because we're supposed to be getting Benintendi back, I believe, and there was somebody else that was coming back for Texas.
Carpenter, you mean?
Carpenter, that's what I'm thinking. Thank you, Carpenter. It was one of those key pieces that were on the roster. But the other problem, it continues that I saw, it's the bullpen, and the inconsistencies, and guys that are being paid to be the guy are not really rising to the occasion, and that primarily rest on the shoulders of Chapman. I think that it's just he's done. He has nothing to give this team. It makes me very nervous to think that they'll put him on a postseason roster.
He can't. He can't be on this roster. He's not good. He hasn't been good for a while now, going back to, I guess, late 2020. He was dreadful last year. He's dreadful in the playoffs to begin with. And if they put him on the playoff roster, it's because there's injuries right now to Clay Holmes, and there's the potential that Marinaccio misses some time as well. So they might have to at a necessity. But even then, they could pick someone from the scrap heap from the AAA roster if they want to add him to the 40-man real quick. I don't think they can, actually. So it's right now, it's really pick from who you have, who's playoff eligible. But I don't see any way that they can put Chapman on this playoff roster and then use him in a key spot. It would just be asking for trouble. He's done.
Yeah, no, his lack of command is even when he's not throwing the ball all over the baseball field, it always seems like he struggles to get strikes. Not even just struggling to get an out. He's struggling to get strikes on the board, and it's like, here we go again. I was at the game yesterday, and we're sitting there, and I'm watching this happen, unfold right in front of me. I'm like, this is embarrassing. It's almost like he's got no pride, and I don't know if that's really the right word to use, but that's the word that comes to mind. It's, if you don't have, when do you get to that? Where is that point where you say, you know what, I am no longer able to help this team?
The Yankees should have said that a long time ago. Yeah. He hasn't been able to help this team a whole year. He's been bad. At the start, he had a 0 ERA through his first 10 appearances or whatever, but he got bailed out several times. So even that ERA was kind of wonky. He hasn't been good all season. And they've kept him around. They kept him around, and they kept bringing him back from several injuries. He had the early season injury, then he had the infection with the tattoo, and he hasn't been good at all. And they continue to use him and try to get him ready for the playoffs. But even if he's at his best, what is he good for? Maybe a 96-mile-an-hour fastball at this point. He's barely touching triple digits. And when he does, it goes 40 feet the other direction of the backstop. So he's not good. You can't use him. And again, it's because of injuries. They might have to use him. But if Marinaccio and Holmes are good to go for the division series, there's zero reason Chapman should make this playoff roster.
No, exactly. The other guy that should be left off the roster is Hicks. When the Orioles played their first run yesterday, there was plenty of time for him to hustle to get to that ball in the outfield that got through. And we're all sitting there, and I'm like, can this guy hustle just once? Just once. Just run for the freaking ball. Because if he would have gotten a better read on that ball that got through the infield, the run doesn't score. Not to say that they wouldn't have scored in the next at bat, but at least you held them off for one more batter. It's kind of like, very lackadaisical, goes after it, throws it back in like, it was just a regular single with nobody on. And so that was actually very frustrating and kind of set the tone for the game.
And he's another one that can't make the roster, but might just in case there's some injuries. But I mean, the fact that they didn't send Peraza down when LeMahieu was activated, it's kind of telling that they don't want to get rid of Peraza just yet. They might have a role for him in the playoffs, whether it's pinch runner and defense. But Hicks has not been good pretty much the whole season, aside from a little bit of June and July. And then since then, he's been dreadful like a lot of the team was. But his defense, he's not a defensive replacement late in the game. He can't start. He's not going to hit you a big home run. He's not going to. The only thing he's good for is drawing the walk. He's just another one that they could have cut bait with, didn't do it, and now they have to probably keep him on the playoff roster and then decide when to get rid of him next year.
Yeah. What about Stanton? I think that although the division's already in hand, these games really don't have much to do with the standings. Would you have rather him be playing every day rather than getting off days, just to make sure that we keep his timing, building back up?
I think he needs to play every day.
Yeah,
because he hasn't been good since coming back from the IL. Simply put, he's had a sprinkled in a few home runs here and there. Obviously, the walk-off grand slam, but he hasn't been that good. So we need him to play and swing the bat as much as possible because we know when October comes around, he can flip that switch and do what he's done for us the last couple of years. He's been the only guy to really show up. So Stanton's very important. So playing him every day, he's a DH, so it's not like he's going to play the outfield even in the playoffs. We have Cabrera for that, the potential of Benintendi coming back. So Stanton at this point, just a DH and let him swing the bat because we know when he's hot, not many people can hit it further than him.
No, there was a lot of confidence about him in the stands, where they all, pretty much everyone around us had that sentiment that when October comes around, Stanton, like you said, is just going to flip the switch. It's just making sure that when that time comes, his timing is right. And we're seeing decent at bats, even though he's not tearing the cover off the ball. He's not flailing at the plate as well. So it's kind of he's at that middle mark right now where he still has a little work to do, but you can see the progression is in the right direction.
Yeah, he just needs to keep going with what he does best, which is just hit the ball for power right now because he can't fix his numbers in 4 games to be like, wow, he had a pretty good year. The power was there for him, but the injuries slowed him down this year. Had he not gotten hurt at the end of the All-Star break, he probably would have had a much better year. But look, at this point, if Stanton can go into the playoffs healthy, hit us a few big home runs, no one's going to care about his struggles past the All-Star break, and then he can just eventually go back into next year and hopefully stay healthy because he's still a huge piece of this lineup.
Yeah, it's him being a solid piece in the lineup, whether it's in the 4th or the 5th spot, I think is going to be really important to the structure of the lineup overall, 1 through 9. So making sure that do not give him any off days. Just let them play it out. And So Spencer's in the same mind frame as us. The Yankees are going to have 5 days off. So I would not rest them for the final series. I wouldn't either. I think that making sure that you build up that camaraderie in the lineup. Never mind just being together for the in the bullpen and in the dugout and the locker room. You want to be able to say, all right, this is where this is our spot in the lineup. This is what our expectations are for production, and roll with it. I think Torres is another one you have to keep playing. You don't want him to get too cold. And so you need to see him in a more consistent manner in these next few games.
They need to find what their lineup's going to be for game one. So we know that I think Carpenter's return has actually been put on hold, so he might not even be back. And Benintendi, if he comes back, will be for this first series. But I think if he's not on the roster when it starts, they can't bring him back unless there's an injury, so he might not even be here as well. So you have to figure out what your lineup's going to be. Are you DHing Donaldson? Are you DHing – you're going to have to DH Stanton. So is Donaldson going to be at third? Where's LeMahieu going to play? Who's going to be on the bench? It's going to be kind of like that interesting thing they had at the early part of the season. Who starts and who gets the bench on the infield? You'd have to think it's LeMahieu at third and Torres at second. And then Donaldson's probably your big bat off the bench because we still don't really have that.
Yeah.
Cabrera's in left, Bader's in center, Judge's in right. That's the best outfield we've had in a very long time. Trevino's catching. You just got to figure out what the lineup's going to be at that point. Rizzo at first, and then you just roll with it. They got to put that lineup out there at least twice during this series to see how it gels. And if it works, then you know what your game one lineup is.
Yeah, I think having the option of either Stanton or Donaldson as a DH, I think it benefits the defense. And it's really hard to say that with too much conviction because Donaldson has been a very solid third baseman, despite his offensive struggles all season. He's only given us little glimpses with the bat, but with the glove, he's been very reliable in the infield and on the hot corner. So it's hard to knock him too much, but you need to make sure that you get, DJ in there as well. So DJ also has the bat to back up his glove. So that's why, I'm with you. I give him the nod for third base.
Yeah, Donaldson he's just a glove right now. He's not really doing anything special with the bat. He may run into one. He's been a lot better. I will give him credit because I've been heavily critical of him all season long. I still think he's a $25 million waste of space, but he has been a lot better over the last couple of months, August and September. So at least he's been hitting the ball better, and if he can catch fire in the postseason, that's only a good thing for us. But DJ's still coming back from an injury, so he might not be the de facto starter. They might have to roll with Donaldson. It might be matchup based, and if maybe LeMahieu's your bat off the bench because he can always come through in a big spot. But we got to remember he's been bad with runners in scoring position this year, and that's been his key. That's been his big thing is getting the big hit. Hasn't done that this year, so maybe you do roll with Donaldson. I personally wouldn't, but you can't ignore what he does with the glove, even though DJ's just fine at third. But maybe you got to ride with the hotter hand, and that's been Donaldson because DJ hasn't played.
Yeah, but with the other factor would be the toe, because I don't think that it's going to be 100% until he gets like significant time off in the off season. I think that's the only thing that's really going to help him. But maybe even if the scenario is that LeMahieu comes in later in a game, pinch hitting for Donaldson in a spot. But like you said, is the runners in scoring position numbers don't really support either one of them. So it's going to be really tough to see how they manage that.
Yeah, and here's a comment here from Spencer. He said, at this point, I want to see Donaldson at third base. With Donaldson, you know what you get. With DJ, it's risky putting a guy in a high-pressure situation when he's in a spring training frame. It's a very good point. Because, like you just mentioned with the toe, because you don't know how he is. That's why I think seeing him in this last series was so important to me, and seeing where they put him. They might play him at first base all 4 games, for all we know, against Texas. play him at second. Who knows? Someone's going to get a day off. They're not playing everybody every game.
Yeah.
But DJ should probably play as often as he can just to make sure he's ready to go for the playoffs because it could all be matchup based, like I said earlier. So everything's fluid at this point. You never know what Boone's going to roll out there, but they have to figure out what their game one lineup is going to be and whether that features DJ at third or Donaldson. Because right now, you cannot, for any reason, take Gleyber Torres out of this lineup. He can't. You cannot take Rizzo out of the lineup. You can't move Gleyber to shortstop because we know that's just disaster waiting to happen. So you have to go with IKF. I still think it should be Peraza, but it's really DJ and Donaldson at third. Who's going to get the start? You're probably going to go Donaldson at this point, but it could all change if DJ has a good series. Maybe they say he's swinging the bat well. Let's put him out there game one.
Yeah, I think the series with Texas is pretty much going to be the tell-all for how everything lines up in the postseason. Not so much the numbers from throughout the whole season. They're going to be looking at. I think they have things that they're going to be looking at as far as judging who gets what role, who's an everyday player, what position, who's their bench player, who gets left off the roster. So I think this is very for games that have no weight on the standings. These games are just as important as if they were fighting for the division.
Right. And the thing is with Donaldson and LeMahieu, it's not like you're losing much with DJ at third because they both have an 8 DRS this year at third base. And DJ's played a lot more third than he has second base this year. So you're not losing a ton. DJ's been just fine at third. Donaldson does have an edge over him and outs above average, but it wouldn't be a significant downgrade if DJ gets to start at third over Donaldson. It's just about who's the hotter bat, really, at that point.
Well, I think the hot bat is really that's where you have to lean because that's been our issue with the postseason is getting the key at bats or big RBIs in big spots. That's what's been really everybody talks about the pitching, and I've said this since last offseason. It's the offense that has let this team down, not so much the pitching. The pitching is been matching up with these opponents very well. It's just timely hitting has been absent, not even minimal. It's been pretty much absent in the offseason, in the postseason. So you have to play the bat, not more more than the glove.
Well, yeah, go back to when this quote unquote window started in 2017. What killed us in the ALCS? It wasn't the pitching. It's the fact that we couldn't hit the ball in Houston. It had nothing to do with the fact that they were cheating.
Yeah.
Because they weren't cheating on the mound. We couldn't hit. Look at 2018. There was that one really, really bad game with Severino, but our hitting let us down against Boston. 2019, same thing. Bats let us down against Houston in the championship series. 2020, bats let us down against Tampa Bay, even though we took the first game of that series. Last year, the bats didn't show up except for two guys, and Stanton and Rizzo. So it's been the same thing throughout this window is they can't hit in October. So if they figure out how to keep what they've been doing in the month of September and roll that over into October, then we're going to win a lot of games this postseason. Now, will they get to the World Series? Who knows? Because the matchups are still yet to be seen. I think we don't know who we're playing. We don't even know who we're playing yet. It could be Cleveland. It could be Tampa. So it's all going to be matchup based, and they just got to be ready for it. That's really all it is. And this series against Texas is about when, if Judge gets 62, and who is starting where, and they got to roll out a certain lineup that's going to be like, that's your game one lineup. That's all you're looking forward to in this series.
Yeah. Because, another comment from Spencer. Thank you. I would really like to see the Yankees achieve 100 wins, but I agree with Bobby. These are now really practice games for our team. Dare I say, even give Chapman another tryout. I'll only agree with you with Chapman because these games don't hold. Like we've said a few times. I don't want to keep repeating the same thing. That these games don't hold any bearing on the standings for either team. So it's not. I don't think you're completely off base by trying to get see one more time if Chapman can get it right. But even if he does, do you really think that fans are going to be that confident with him going, all right, he finished the season off with one last great start. He's back. Let's go. No, I do not. I don't have that sentiment, and I doubt anybody else does. The confidence in Chapman is gone.
Yeah, you can't use him. And you cannot use him. There's no audition. There's nothing he can do in 1 or 2 games against the Texas Rangers that would tell me he's ready to pitch against Seattle or Cleveland or Tampa or Toronto or Houston. Nothing he can do that would make me confident, because I'm actually reading something right here from Jason Stark. And since August 19th, he's made only 8 appearances since the infected tattoo mishap. But in half of those appearances, including yesterday, he had at least as many walks as outs. And in 3 of those appearances, also including Sunday, he threw more balls than strikes. His total for those 8 trips to the mound, 70 strikes, 67 balls. Is that good?
No,
Question mark. That's how he ends this little part of his article. And Sweeney Murdy quoted that, and he said, "There is simply no way Aroldis Chapman throws a meaningful inning for the Yankees again. He can't be used at all in a playoff game. And it's only out of desperation if they use him because everybody else is hurt. He can't be on this playoff roster. He sucks. He's cooked. He's washed. He's finished. Get rid of him as soon as possible." And I'm so glad that last inning yesterday was the last inning we'll ever see him throw in a Yankee uniform. It's so telling, because that was exactly what we have seen from him his last few years in his Yankee tenure. They should have never brought him back for a 3rd time, and I'm so glad he's done with this team because he sucks.
Yeah. No, that better be the last time. And that was pretty, and that was the sentiment in the stands as well. It was, they don't want to see this guy anymore. This is what we got last night was exactly what we expected from him. Like, it wasn't one of those, I can't believe he had such a bad outing. It's all right. Well, it's Chapman being Chapman, and you cannot put what this season has been. You cannot put it in his hands at all.
No, you're asking for trouble, because imagine we're in a game 4 or 5 scenario in the first round, whatever it may be, whoever we're playing, Tampa Bay, Seattle, or Cleveland. I still don't know what the bracket is exactly, but I think it's Tampa versus Cleveland, and the winner plays us. Imagine we're in a game 4 or 5 scenario, and we go to Aroldis Chapman, and he walks the first 2 or 3 he has to face 3 batters. So what if he's going to walk the first one? That's almost a guarantee at this point. He may get the second guy out, but then he's going to walk the 3rd guy, and now you got to bring in a new pitcher with 2 guys on and 1 out, and you're putting this new guy into a position where it's almost like you're gonna fail because of the guy before you couldn't strike out anybody. The only thing he can do is throw hard, but he can't locate. He hasn't been locating for about 2-3 years now. There is nothing he can do to make me say he deserves to be on this playoff roster. So there's no audition. I would hope that was his last inning. It's, again, just a perfect example of what he's been for us the last 2 years. He stinks.
Yeah, the other part, he just, not even that he stinks, he just sucks. Let's be honest about it. And that's as politely as I could put it on air. Because, believe me, there are a lot of choice words we could use for him. But Spencer's dropping one more comment here. We have, in regards to Judge, in my opinion, Roger Maris Jr. has been a distraction with his assertions about what the home run record is. I understand how he feels, but I think he should keep quiet. How do you guys feel about it? I think he should keep it. He said what he said, and you let it go. I think him trying to stay into the spotlight, I think it's not serving anybody a purpose. I think it's kind of making a side story out of what should be the lead story, which is the overall season that Judge is having, not just the home runs. I think that's getting lost, and I think it's starting to get to Judge.
I don't think it is, because I don't see anything in his approach that tells me Maris is getting into his head or distracting him. I think he's just trying to get it over with because he wants a day off. He's been playing every single day for like a month and a half. So I think he wants to get out of the way, because once he hits 62, he's not playing until the playoffs. He shouldn't be playing, if we're being honest. He needs to be ready to go. And if it wasn't for this record, this potential to break the Maris record, he wouldn't be playing right now, or he would have sat at least one game of the series, and he'd probably sit all but maybe one or two of this Texas series. So until he hits 62, he's going to play because they want him to get that record, but he really shouldn't be. But I think in Maris, they keep showing him. The record's been broken several times already. This is the American League record. I get it. It's still historical because it's a Yankee doing it, a Yankee breaking a Yankees record. It's special. I get it. But I just wish they'd stop showing him because, like, get him off the camera. He has nothing to do with it. It was his dad. And I understand how he feels, but, like, come on now. The record's been there for 60 plus years. Get over it. Stop showing him. And just when Judge breaks it, I'm sure he's going to say, good, congratulations, whatever. He might feel however he feels, but at least it was a Yankee. And if that's how he wants to acknowledge the official record as 62 from Aaron Judge, then so be it. But I just hope that they stop showing them the guy every single at bat because he has nothing to do with what Aaron Judge is doing.
Yeah. I think they're showing him more than they're showing his mother at this point, who's been there traveling with him throughout the whole thing. So, yes, again, how would you feel if Aaron Judge ultimately did not hit number 62? He says, I would be okay with it. I don't think it matters at this point. I think for the record books, it's great. Reaching 61 is no easy feat. Think of all the power hitters that we've had. How many of them have really hit this mark? Even to break 60. It is so rare that, and he was doing it at such a pace. We thought 62 was going to, come and go weeks ago. It's not easy when you have that on your shoulders because, especially when your main focus and as being Judge, your main focus is to just contribute to a winning game. It's not about individual accolades for him. So he's not thinking about it. And I think, that's only going to serve him a better purpose.
I wouldn't mind if he doesn't hit it. I mean, I'd be a little salty, like, man, I wanted to see 62, but let's be honest, he had one in Baltimore that Wall took away from him. So he should be at 62 right now, if we're being honest. But at the end of the day, all he's done is put this team on his back, and the fact that he's even in this conversation, that he tied Roger Maris, he passed Babe Ruth. These are legends in this organization. It only furthers the point that we've been saying all season long, and how every other fan's been saying, is that he needs to be paid. So even if he doesn't break it, the fact that when you look at the single season home run leaders for the New York Yankees, you're going to see Aaron Judge right next to Roger Maris, whether he passes him or not. That should be enough to say, this guy's our franchise. He deserves all the money that he wants.
Yeah, and that's about it. I don't want to get too much into the contract talks yet. We've been on that. We've been talking about it. The off season, we're going to be breaking down each player and whether they should be signed, released, traded, and whatnot. So stay tuned for that. But real quick, last week we had Tony Clark join us as an Orioles fan that he is, and we were talking about some of the players from the Orioles that are rising a little faster up the ranks in their organization than expected. From an outside point of view, as Yankee fans, watching this Orioles team, were there any players that stood out, saying that they're going to kind of break out even further into next year?
Rutschman, they got some decent pitching, but Tony Clark had to go ahead and boast about his Orioles taking 2 out of 3 from a Yankee team that didn't have anything to play for. So you know what, Tony, you get nothing from me. Hope your team finishes in last place next year.
All right. So it's the trash talk is fun, but sometimes you have to look at the angle that you're talking from. It's like the Met fans that want to talk crap. But
let them talk, because look where they are right now.
They didn't help themselves with all that banter about Brett. We're going to take Judge from you and this and that. We're signing Judge. It's like, well, worry about your own house first, because you guys aren't looking too hot right now. But so it's be careful who you scream at, because it can come back and bite you in the ass.
It's a good way to put it. Good way to end it there too.
That is going to wrap things up for us today on this Monday. Tonight, we do have Texas. So we'll be breaking that game down tomorrow. Thank you for watching on Northeast Streaming Sports on Roku and Facebook and on our YouTube channel and Twitch. Remember, as always, wear your pinstripes with pride. Play hard.